Morning YouTube, welcome back to another vlog on the Ducati Multistrada 1260S long-term owners or high mileage long-term owners review. I think the last video that I did was towards the back end of last year when I was humming and hawing whether to keep the bike or not, like we all do, or whether to carry on and run it for another season. I think at that stage I'd done something like 30 odd 5,000 miles or so. So I decided to keep it because it's absolutely perfect for me. There's nothing really that I'm interested in. I know the new Multistrada's out, but it doesn't really tickle me. But anyway, so I decided to keep it, and I had my second Desmo service done at the back end of January this year. I'm recording this now in June 2022. So I had it all done then, and it was slightly over on the recommended mileage, but it done 37,000 miles. So put it in. Nothing really to report from that. It was sort of a basic belts and Desmo service. They didn't find anything. Couple of collets needed changing and a couple of shims. That's basically it. No shims and no collets needed changing on the first one. So it sort of shows the lack of wear and tear, I suppose, within the Desmo system. But anyway, no issues really with it, and looking forward to this season. So as we are sort of 5 months on, the bike's done now 47,500 miles, nearly 48. So I've done a fair few miles this season already, been on a fair few trips. One of the trips was to Spain and Portugal, which I'd had delayed for a couple of years now, since early 2020 when the pandemic first hit. So I wanted to do that across to Santander on the ferry, and then down through Spain, over the Picos and down through Salamanca and the west part or the west side of Madrid, right the way down through the Rio Tinto mines down to the southern part of Spain and across the border to Faro in Portugal. And then the main part of the trip was 3 or 4 days up through the N2 road in Portugal. Their sort of Route 66 they call it, but great road, fantastic scenery over 3 or 4 mountain ranges, awesome. Can't recommend that any more. Quiet roads, great roads, bit abrasive the roads, but come on to that a little bit later. So yeah, did that, then came back, and during that trip I sort of noticed a few issues that I had. Also not a few, one specific issue, and that was a slight misfire and a slight lack of performance when you're rolling on. It's all right when you're cruising and so on, but when you're on the gas, it just felt as if it was stuttering, spluttering, and just a little bit hesitant. So I was a little bit worried about that, didn't know what it was. There was no lights on the engine management system, nothing like that. It was just, you know, that was just the responsiveness. Got it back, took it up to my dealer again, Pro Twins. They looked at it, asked specifically any lights on the engine management, nothing. So they were a little bit stumped first off. And so I had to wait, 5-6 weeks or so before I could get it in. It's perfectly usable. It's just, when you're rolling on. So another little trip to Wales that I did, and with the slight hesitant and spluttering, came back and I thought, well, I really do need to get this sorted. So managed to get a slot with Pro Twins, and they looked at it, and I at that time was looking on a few of the forums, just seeing what it could be. Nothing to do, there was nothing on the Multistrada forums, but on a couple of other Ducati bike specific forums, they were talking about the HT lead on the front cylinder might have an issue with it. So there's only 2 or 3 instances of it, and when I spoke to the guys at Pro Twins, they'd never come across this particular issue. But nonetheless, once they took the bike in and investigated it, they replaced the front HT lead, which they've never had to do before. They also changed the front spark plug, test rode it, completely solved the problem. So it's just something to bear in mind. There is a potential issue around the performance responsiveness, and it could be to do with that HT lead. It's relatively cheap to replace. It's 30-35 quid, plus obviously a spark plug if you want to. A little bit fiddly to get to. You have to slightly move forward the radiator to get to the front cylinder, but if you're mechanically minded, I'm sure you can do that. I'm not, so I didn't. So yeah, that was the cause of those sort of main issues. I then went on another recent tour with some friends to the Vosges Mountains in the Alsace-Lorraine area of France, bordering France and Germany and a bit of Luxembourg, for an awesome week. Really good performance roads, if you want to call it that, and like I say, the bike performed superbly. So yeah, that's just something to be mindful of. It's pretty rare, but if you do have that sort of issue, it's not the end of the world. Might be just the HT lead. Whilst it was in at Pro Twins, I had a little bit of wobble shake. I've had it for a while, so I got them to change the headstock bearing. That was the expensive bit, not so much the bearing, but the labour to rip off the front of the bike and get to that headstock bearing. So I was told that I was lucky, I would be lucky if I got 35,000 miles out of a headstock bearing. So the fact that I got over 40, more like 45 before it actually be done, was good news, I suppose, in that point. So again, you've got to bear in mind that those types of things will need to be replaced like any maintenance. So apart from that, now that the headstock bearing's done, now that the HT lead's changed, performance of the bike's fantastic. Couldn't want for any more. I've literally just come back from a couple of weekends away, one in Wales and another one down the Devon and Cornwall, just for long weekends, and again the bike performed fantastically. I need to change the tyres again, so I'm still sticking with row 5s. I think this might be the 5th or 6th set I've put on this bike. I still love those. The Road 6s are out now, so I would be interested in hearing your thoughts. If you run Road 6s on Multistrada, I'd be really interested to hear your experiences and the differences. All I hear is 10%, 15% better mileage, better grip, so negligible, I suppose, but still would be interested. So yeah, hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight as to some of the things to look out for long-term ownership. Like I say, the bike's done 47,500 miles now since I've just come back from Devon and Cornwall, so it's still running fine, still running a dream. It'll need its intermediate service, you know, fairly soon, oil and filter, usual bits and pieces, but I'm going to run it for the rest of the year. It'll be well past 50,000 miles, probably nearer 60 by the time I get to the end of the season. So I'll do a little video at that end, at the end of the season, just to give you my thoughts on that. At the same time, I hope I'm by no means the owner with the most miles on this bike or these bikes. So if you've got any experiences that you want to share in the comments about things I might need to look out for as the bike gets older and more miles on. I'm specifically interested in the suspension. I've done nothing as far as the Skyhook suspension. I think in the last Desmo sort of list of things that should be done would be changing the fork oil, which my dealer said no, don't need to do it. It's not mandatory, and didn't recommend it. Obviously, saved me a bit of money there. So from that point, I'd be interested to see if you have had to do that and why you did that, and anything else I need to be mindful of as far as the suspension's concerned. Whether the rear shock needs to be serviced, again, I'd be interested in that. The other thing that I'm slightly not concerned about, just mindful of, is the clutch. Obviously this bike has got a quick shifter, but obviously still the clutch is needed. A friend of mine that's got a 1200 manual, no quick shifter, has just changed the plates on his Multistrada, and it's done less miles than mine, so that would be just quite interesting. And anything else you might think of that I just need to be mindful of that might rear its ugly head over the next few months or so, or next sort of 10-15,000 miles. So like and share, leave your comments. I try to reply as quickly as possible to as many as possible. Enjoy your riding, enjoy your rest of the season, and I will speak to you again a little bit later on in the year. Take care.